Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Design Review Board public meeting of June 22nd, 2017 is called to order. Please refrain from talking among yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, on any of the applications to be reviewed today are asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be asked to speak by the board when your case is called. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project in the event of a return for redesign decision by the board must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent hearings. Current DRB agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeal is available from staff. This will be roll call. Mr. Charchian?
Here.
Mr. Simonian?
Present.
Mr. Benlian?
Here.
Chairman Malikian?
Present.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on June 15, 2017. Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any oral communications. Do you?
Neither do I.
And there are no staff announcements at this time.
Okay, so then let's begin. Are we ready for the first project? Okay.
Good evening, Design Review Board member. The case before you is a Design Review case number PDR 1628773 located at 1953 Bellevue Drive. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing one-story, 1,378 square foot single-family residence and to build a new 2,235 square foot two-story single-family house on a 7,450 square foot lot located in the R1 zone, floor area ratio District 1. The applicant is proposing to maintain the existing swimming pool and detached two-car garage and to remodel the existing detached two-car garage to match the proposed house. The proposal was approved with condition by Design Review Board in October 2008, and since no building permit were obtained for this approval and the Design Review Board approval expired, you have the new proposal before you, which was altered slightly from the original proposal to address the condition of approval from the approval in 2008. In terms of site planning, the proposed house will not alter the site planning of the existing house significantly. There is no change to the 25-foot front setback, which is consistent with the adjacent property and within the neighborhood average of 25-foot front setback. There is no proposed change to the existing concrete driveway, and the existing detached two-car garage will be maintained in its location, as I mentioned. But the applicant is proposing to remodel the existing garage to reflect the architectural style of the proposed house. There is no significant change to the existing landscape and swimming pool, and there is no proposed change to existing 6-foot vinyl fences. In terms of mass and scale of the house, the majority of houses within 30 feet of the subject sites are one-story. The proposed design minimizes the mass and volume of the proposed two-story house by breaking the two-story volume to help reducing the overall mass. The overall scale and proportion of the proposed two-story house, including the second floor setbacks and articulation at the front, which is the south side, and at the east facade, are appropriate to the site and neighboring properties. The proposed balcony at the second floor facing Bellevue Drive helps to reduce the mass and boxy design at the front facade. The new patio cover and balcony at the rear of the house and 2 new patio covers at the east side of the house also are appropriately designed, draw out their setbacks, and use of posts and arch opening to reduce the mass at these areas. The roof configuration, which is combination of hip and gable roof, are appropriate to the overall design. And the overall proposed architectural details and materials reinforce the character-defining feature of the proposed Spanish colonial revival style and are consistent with the architectural style of the neighboring properties. The material and size of the new windows are appropriate to the style of the house. The new windows will be recessed, fiberglass, fixed, and sliding windows with external grids. The proposed changes to the existing two-car garage, including the gabled roof with exposed wooden rafter tails and a smooth stucco wall cladding, are consistent with the house. Staff recommends approval of this project with condition of providing a greater articulation at the west facade to reduce the massive appearance at the west facade, redesign the dining room volume at the front facade to make it more appropriate to the scale of the overall facade, redesign the dining room window to reduce its height and make it more in keeping with picture windows often found in houses of similar style, provide a single lift entry door, possibly with slight lights, to better conform of the proportion of the entry porch, submit new plans to show the replacement of the vinyl fences with appropriate walls to reinforce the proposed Spanish revival architectural style in terms of material, style, and color. Use two-piece Spanish tile for the house and garage roof, which is appropriate to the proposed architectural style and the neighborhood concept. Decorative pavers are proposed for a portion of the existing driveway adjacent to the garage. A condition of approval also is recommending to submit detail of the proposed paver and also to show that this paver continues on the entire concrete driveway, not only in that portion. And submit the specification and location of the light fixture with respect to the adjacent properties. Revise proposal to show casement and fixed windows instead of sliding windows. Submit proposal for the garage door and also for the window color to be appropriate with the overall architectural concept. And at the end, show the trash storage area that adequately screens the bins from public view and is compatible with the overall project design. For this project, staff received a public comment in opposition of the project, which has been provided for your attention. And also, you can find the previous design approved by DRB in 2008, which is available also for your review. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for your questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? Please.
The 2008 approval, do you happen to have those approval conditions or minutes?
I do have the conditions.
You beat me to my question. That's good. Do we want to wait for that, or should I open, or do we do? Let's read it.
Maybe read it. Yeah. Give us some insight.
The current proposal has addressed those conditions to the degree it has.
For example, the 2008 had a single door with side lights, and they changed that. So was that part of the condition? That was one of my questions.
That's a current condition rather than previous.
But previously, it was a single door with side lights, and changed it to double doors on the new one. I was just wondering if that was a condition to change it.
It was not a condition. That's a new staff condition.
Okay.
Should I read them, or does everybody?
Yeah. Can we read them?
Yeah. So it was October the 2nd, 2008. There were 2 board members that were absent, and the conditions were choose a style Spanish Revival or Tuscan and be consistent throughout the design. Number 2 was reduce the amount of stone used at the front elevation. Number 3 is modify the west elevation to reduce massive appearance. Number 4 is paint. Paintable fiberglass windows shall be used. All MUN shall be 3-dimensional. And I'm kind of paraphrasing here. All window headers shall be recessed. Number 6 is there should be a consistent use of materials and details used to convey a clear choice of rustic Tuscan style or Spanish revival. Review and revise and provide staff prior to approval. Number 7 is high-quality materials shall be used throughout, such as trim, painted wood, lightweight concrete, foam shall not be used. Number 8 is reduce the north balcony size of the upper level. Number 9 is remove elongated post member along the fence wall. And number 10 is the garage should be consistent with the overall project proposed without substantial structural changes. Those were the conditions.
Okay.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing. And so I have two cards regarding the project. I have an applicant and I have an architect. Who would like to go first? Applicant? Okay, Gary Akopian. You can state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, board members, honorable chair, staff. My name is Gary Akopian. I reside, actually, my office is in Glendale, and I reside in Glendale. The address is 3786 La Crescenta Avenue, Unit 201. This project has a history. We started in 2008, passed successfully DRB from the first DRB meeting. And even we went through the whole plan check process, but right at the end, when we almost done and pulling a permit, the owner dropped the project. That was recession times, if you remember, because of this same financial difficulties. And since then, we haven't touched it, and I came back to our office last year. We went back and forth a few times with the staff. We decided to do little changes without telling the staff as far as that front entry door is concerned. And the other things are pretty much late with the staff recommendation. That's it. I mean, it was successful that time. Hopefully, it's going to be successful this time. We came together with the architect, Armen Kazanchan, and I believe I could pass it to him to tell about the conditions that we have from the staff.
So do we ask you the questions regarding the previous conditions?
The
and
previous
what is-
conditions, me alone, yeah.
Okay.
But with the new, yeah.
So we're looking at the 2008, and assuming what you just told us, that this was the set and it was almost ready to be issued. Right?
That's true.
So some of these conditions that we board back then it was board one placed on the project, it seems like it hasn't really made any changes when I'm looking at the comparison. For example, reduce the amount of stone used in front elevation is pretty much identical.
No,
If
it's
you
not
look at
true.
the elevation rather than the rendering, you'll see that stone was removed from, a limited amount of stone was taken off the second story, but at the remainder of the house, it's
Just
more or less
over the
same.
entrance.
And besides,
volume of the
yeah,
second
So
floor.
that is sufficient enough for
No, well,
I mean, for
that's,
that
we left that for the board to decide. We
Okay.
didn't make a staff
Well,
condition for that.
yeah, probably you don't have the initial submittal drawings, which shows lots of stone on it.
Yeah, no, they
This
have.
is the, this
Yeah,
is
we
the
have
it
original.
right here.
It's right here.
That's the rendering. I believe, okay.
They have the elevation.
It could be this,
Yeah.
Clarification, is this black and white package, which package is this?
You can go back to the mic, so
Oh, this is the.
you need to talk.
So no, it was after the first initial submittal. So this is something that happens, but after conditions that in place.
This is where you ended up while you were in plan check.
No, this is the
No.
first submittal for review of the design review board in 2008.
I see.
Yeah,
And was there
without
was there a return for redesign, or it was
No, it
just
was just
approved
approved with conditions,
with
and
conditions?
I think he worked with the staff for the condition, and they submit for the plan check at that time.
And-
But this is the original design, the design review, look at it and approve. the
So, but
condition.
the revised set of plans that staff approved, while we don't have that, right?
We
So
don't
we
have
don't
it
have that.
here.
Okay.
Well, it was. I could recall a few things. We added up a chimney on a west side to soften the. To articulate that particular side.
We should
and then
assume
also,
we should assume that what you've submitted today is similar to what it was approved, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
That's all right. Thank you. Armin Kazanjian.
Good afternoon, Armin Kazanchian, architect. I work on the project with Gary. Just very briefly, in the interest of saving time, I will be very brief. We've reviewed the conditions that were presented in the staff report, and we agree with these conditions. I was planning on going through them one by one, but in the interest of time, I won't. I think we agree and accept these conditions, and we'll work with staff to make those revisions.
Before you leave, you have a question for the architect?
No, my questions were answered insofar as the difference between the set and the
Okay.
original minutes, and I guess what we're going off of is the color set, and then the architect is saying that he's okay with the conditions as presented by staff, so I don't have any
So
questions.
there seemed to be a whole new set of conditions that
Yes.
was presented.
Yes.
And you guys had
Yes,
reviewed that,
we-
because it's going to make a dramatic change from what you're.
We got this a couple days ago, and we reviewed this. I can briefly, I guess, go through the important points. Some of the things like changing to single-leaf door and replacing the fence is very, very simple. We can work with the staff. The more, I think, important things is the articulation on the west side. We're planning on removing the fireplace on the west side and pushing the second floor bedroom back, so there's a break in the mass from first floor to second floor, and also that will articulate that hip roof on the rest of the elevation. Redesign of the dining room volume on the front. I think the window size is a little larger for that volume piece. I think we're planning on reducing the size of the window, and then the piece will be more appropriately sized. The paving pattern on the driveway, we have a pattern. I think we can pick up pattern with staff. The one point there I wanted to make is we wanted to do the pattern in front of that patio area directly, and not the entire length of the driveway, just to sort of mark that patio area. But we'll be happy to do the rest if that's necessary. Specifications on light fixtures, that's fine. We can do that. Casement windows, that's fine. We can do that. The garage, the colors of the windows, that's fine. The trash area we were planning on putting behind the garage, and they're next to the walkway there, so it can be pulled in and out, and it'll be out of the view. So, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
Please.
And as far as the stone and the use thereof around the building, what are your thoughts on that as well?
Material board.
I was not involved in the first design, but in general, my thoughts with stone is I generally like to keep it at the base of the building. So, looking at the comments, looking at the plans now, you work on these things and then you have a chance to go back and look at them. Maybe we can reduce some of the second floor, the stone at the second level, and just keep it at the base. I think that would be a little bit more successful. Especially, like I'm currently looking at that east elevation above that patio and that stonework up there. I think whenever you have stone on the second floor, it just starts to look kind of heavy. So,
I have a quick question.
In terms of the old conditions, there was a condition, I think, that talks about the second floor balcony, reducing the size. Do you guys do that?
Do you want to talk about that?
This is about old stories that old men coming in. What was that?
The second story balcony, there was, I believe, a condition that talks about reducing the size of the balcony. So in the new design, I kind of see that it's still the same size. Do you guys address that?
I don't remember how big was the initial project, but definitely we addressed that because we worked with the staff, with the planner on this project. The planner wasn't even, he's
Same
retired,
identical.
so I can, huh?
Same identical.
No, the new proposal is 10 feet deep rather than 12 feet deep, so 2 feet was shaved off.
No,
of it.
this was, north elevation. Sorry, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
the backyard
The
balcony.
backyard.
Oh, yeah.
So it used to be 12, now it's 10?
Now it's 10, but it's the same width, 16.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions? Nope. All right, thank you. Thank you. We have a card, Rafael Velasco.
I don't look Mexicano, do I? Good afternoon.
I appreciate your time. If that's going to be the house, that looks pretty nice design. I am concerned about the quality of life in my neighborhood, the cars all over the streets. Sometimes I have neighbors that don't move their car for a couple of weeks, and a bigger house means more people will be living in it, means more cars, and I hope that, this approval has taken into consideration the quality of life, taken into consideration historical house, old house is being torn down, and hope all that is taken into consideration. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tenny Nazari.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to be heard. I'm here with my parents. We have been living at 1433 Linden for the past 5.5 years, and we're right across the street from them. And I have 3 issues that I just like to be heard on. The first is the fact that my father purchased his house. One of the biggest reasons was because he would walk into the backyard and he could see the mountains. It was like a lifelong dream of his to own a house in Glendale to have this view. And I just feel like it would be remiss of me to not bring that up, just to at least be on the record that the view would be obstructed substantially by this house if it is going to be designed in this way. Second is that currently there's only one other 2-story house in the area on this block. And from what I understand, that house was had to go through various different cycles to be approved, and it's still kind of an eyesore in comparison to the other quaint single-story homes. In fact, I believe based on the report that I read that 95% of the homes are 1-story within a 300-foot range. And my biggest concern isn't even this first or the second house. What if everybody else on this block decides to go forward and make it 2 stories? Everybody that's living down the street or on that street, and we're right by the mountains, no one's going to be able to see the view of the mountains anymore, which is one of the biggest selling points, which adds value to the homes and keeps the value of the homes. So if one person does it, if the second person does it, setting the precedent of allowing other people in the area to be able to do that, while it's a beautiful home, and I cannot argue with that, I don't think anybody can, but it is going to take away from everybody else. And finally, the other concern that I have, which I think is the biggest concern, is the privacy factor. The balcony on the second floor that's facing Bellevue Drive, anybody who stands there can look directly into my backyard. And not to say we're doing anything wrong in the backyard, but we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, that if you walk into the backyard and, they're just standing there or even looking out the window, everything is completely visible. So if one day I don't want to look the same way as I do when I go out the front door or when I'm doing something in my backyard, I always have to have that in the back of my mind, that somebody could possibly be looking there. So those are the three things that I wanted to bring to your attention and ask you to take that into consideration when you're making your decision, please.
We have a question.
And you're referring to the front balcony? the
Correct.
one facing the front?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because we're on the corner on Linden and Bellevue. So we're right, the corner house always has advantages and disadvantages. One of them is this, and I understand that. But, and it's not, I do speak only on my behalf and my family's behalf at this point, but everybody down that same street is going to have that same type of
I
issue.
understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it Nurses Balian? Yeah.
How you doing? We reside at 1957 Bellevue, next door, west side. We just most recently purchased the property. And our the balcony and the several windows facing the west side, they're going to be in a total privacy invasion on our bedroom, kitchen, driveway, and adjacent den that we have. And at 25 feet 6 inches high, it's pretty tall elevation. And we have to look the neighbors like this. It's kind of quiet high, given, but it's design-wise, it's a beautiful house for the neighborhood. But like other neighbor indicated, it's going to be in a way, it's going to be an eyesore, especially facing those many windows, driveway, bedroom, kitchen, and the den. And we have to look our neighbors like this. And I don't know how far is the property line from the given proposal. That's another factor. It's a concern and issue. And also the back balcony. I don't know how much it reduced. It was indicated about 2 feet. But if it's an open balcony, pretty much it's basically going to overlook our property on the west side. That given said, those are our primary concerns.
Thank you. I will allow 3 minutes of rebuttal. Would the architect want to speak or the applicant?
Couple quick things, I guess. Do I need to restate my name? Or no?
Oh, no, that's
Okay. The house is only a 2,200 square foot house, so I think to the first gentleman's comment, it's a modest sized house. I think it's not going to impact the neighborhood as far as traffic or more people. To the concern about the neighbor to the west with the balcony, I think the changes we make to the west elevation with we're thinking about setting back the bedroom with the windows further back and filling that space with a planter actually on the second floor. And I think that planter can act as a screen and create some privacy towards their house. If you look at the site plan, sort of the patio and the balcony fall where the opening to their between their garage and their house is. As far as the front balcony, I think it's quite a ways back from across the street. I think, we do these balconies in the front just to give it some articulation and some shadows on the elevation, and it's sort of a give and take to take away the boxy look of the building. So I think it's more of a balcony to improve the elevation of the building rather than usable outdoor space. Thank you.
We have a question.
How are you set on the stone veneer that you've proposed on the material board?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We can be flexible.
Thank you.
Public session is closed. We'll let Mr. Blanco start.
So basically, when I looked at the package, I didn't have the old package to do the comparison. It wasn't included in the package, and I tried to go online and look at the minutes, and I couldn't find that because it goes back as, I believe, 2009. You can go back beyond that. So I didn't know exactly what were the conditions and what were the changes. There were some issues I had, which is in the front elevation. It's the proportion of the dining area. I had issues with the stone. I think there's still too much, even though you say it's reduced. It's only reduced on top of the entryway, so it's kind of almost the same. And I'd rather actually the stone to go completely, in my opinion, or use some different stone. But other than that, I mean, if you comply with all the conditions that staff had put in their approval, I think I'll be okay in supporting the project. These are my comments.
I have similar comments. I think this was staff's recommendations were somewhat extensive, and as you illustrated, you could fairly easily work those conditions in. I do believe that the stone needs to be reduced drastically as well, so I do agree with that. It could maybe drop to the base of the building. Without going through each specific condition, I think if all those conditions are met, the project will certainly soften up. Insofar as the overall mass and scale of the project is concerned, I think the type of stone and the abundance of stone adds to the mass. Secondly, I think the front balcony and the columns of the balcony kind of emphasize that and provide more massing to the home than what really should be there. So I think those two items, reduction of the stone maybe as a base, simplification or even removal of the balcony in the front will certainly, make a big difference. Insofar as these lots are concerned, they're not very wide. They're 50 feet wide. So if you want to place your garage in the rear, which most of the homes on the street have garages at the rear, then in a way, you're limited to the amount of footprint you can take up. And so this applicant is going to the second story to try to get the program to work. I don't particularly have an issue with the second story on the project. If on the west facade, as the architect indicated, further undulation and stepping back is created, which will certainly help with you and the neighbor as far as creating more separation. I would say that the neighbor to the west did voice some concerns. If you could minimize windows, or even some of the windows could be placed higher so they're more for light as opposed to direct visibility into the property next door, you would know that program better than, I don't want to prescribe it, but I think you're getting the sense, would probably reduce some of those concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Churchin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will, for sake of time, join on the comments Mr. Simonian made as to the overall design. My concerns with this project are, I think that some of the conditions that were laid out in 2008, especially choosing between styles, has not really reflected well in the new design. The new design, when you compare the renderings, is extremely similar to the old design, where the board in 2008 was giving the direction of being either more Tuscan or more Spanish. I'm seeing some of that here. We have some archway type openings, then we have some straight openings. We have a lot of detail that is missing on the new design. I'm also concerned with the overall footprint. I understand that it's only a 2,200 square foot home, but the overall footprint of the house with all the patios and outdoor areas, especially that balcony and patio combo in the back, I think adds mass. 2-foot reduction is only a 2-foot reduction. So I could be in support of the project, but I think that we would need to see significant modifications, as staff has indicated. Modifications in 2008, the conditions in 2008 were significant. Yet here we are looking at a submittal that really isn't incorporating those and is requiring staff to go back and recondition this project heavily. So I have some reservations about that, about not being able to see what that looks like once it's all done. And then, the window details, I mean, there's a lot of things that staff has conditioned here, like the window details being changed. So that's kind of where I sit at this time.
Thank you. So, one of the, when I'm looking at this and looking at some of the conditions, usually when there's at least 12 conditions, and then that brings a concern when I'm looking at the package and I'm looking at the previous approved set and the conditions that was placed previously, and I agree that that what I see, the result of the conditions and what is coming in front of us, I really don't see a big difference in the sense that, what it was presented and what it's being presented now. So I think I agree with the architect that there's some improvements that needs to happen. Particularly for my view of this, the west elevation and the front elevation, the south elevation, to me, the proportions are out of scale, in my opinion. But before I get into all of this details, I just wanted to kind of touch upon one of the neighbors that spoke about the view. And unfortunately, we do not have any ordinance, City of Glendale does not have any ordinance blocking somebody's view. So if by right they are able to build a house in this zone, we do not have the authority to deny them just because they're going by right. So I just wanted to but we do have the authority to look at the design, see if it's appropriate, it's fitting fine, and its context and the design and overall motif of the project that is being presented to us. So to me, the conditions that they've created, the same plane of bringing stone and stucco at the same plane, breaking that whole elevation on the west elevation, to me that's not a solution. I think a little bit more effort needs to go into looking into the volumes and the spaces within the building itself, and possibly start carving away from some of the interior spaces. Also, the usage of railing, how it's being used. The front is in more of a solid state, whereas in the back is more ornamental. And so I think that brings us back to the first condition that the 2008 board placed, is that choose a style of Spanish Revival or Tuscan or whichever it is, and that will allow you to kind of dictate and move the project towards the appropriate detailing and conditions that will make the project a little bit more consistent. As far as the mass, again, I'm not going to talk about that, but I think my colleagues touch upon those, and staff has quite a bit of conditions there, which I do want to read through them and just have staff, and we want to, whoever's going to make the condition, either approval or return or whichever it is, I do want to kind of review the old conditions as well. To me, I think there's some stuff that is from the back in 2008, it's still valid, that I think we can kind of look into that. So, would you like to go through the conditions, or anybody has any comments or anything that they want to talk about?
Very quickly, for the sake of time, I think we all agreed that all the staff conditions are appropriate. And so we could maybe perhaps look at the old conditions and see which one of the old conditions we want to add to the new conditions. Do you think that's a good way to kind of approach it, to get a set of conditions at least to start with?
So yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's a little bit concerning for me to see this package, the conditions, and looking at the 2008 conditions that board had placed, and what has resulted in is what we have in front of us, which is very similar to what it was originally approved
Yeah, I
with
mean-
conditions.
I mean, realistically, if you look at the north, sorry, thank you. If you look at the, for example, the north elevation or the rear north elevation, it's almost identical except for the fact that they've added an extra chimney. From that
west?
perspective.
The
West
north.
elevation.
No, the north elevation. If you look
North.
at the north elevation, they've added, on here, you have
But I
an
think-
outline of an additional chimney.
I think our architect mentioned that they want to remove the
Yeah,
west
and-
chimney.
Let me
Yeah,
get
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And so then we're talking about removing this chimney, which was probably added to address the conditions
Yeah.
that the west elevation
Right. So that
was
that's what-
too bland or too unarticulated.
Yeah, well, staff saw that the only change at the west elevation was sticking on the chimney. The chimney itself isn't the problem, there's just no other articulation on the facade.
Well-
It sounds like the applicant is willing to change the floor plan and articulate that in a different way.
And, you know, and they've added this feature number 8, which is like a railing patio with its own little,
But
looks
it's
like
not
trellis,
even
but I don't see enough
it's
detail to
not
understand
even
that.
it's not even a patio. I mean, if you look at the second floor plan, there's a high window, which is a tub in front of it, and it's just a railing that is just
Kinda hanging
hanging on.
Yeah, they just extended the roof a little bit and tacked on a railing, so we didn't think that addressed the condition at all.
May I make a suggestion on this
Yes.
west facade? In essence, if we break the floor plan, we're right past the dining room, the bathroom, and the kitchen, et cetera, kind of shift in, say 6 inches or a foot or whatever it is, then there's going to be a break between this facade and this. And then if this entire second story, as the architect mentioned, is going to step back anyways, then we'll have articulation between the stucco and this, which might be a different material, and then also the second floor would step back, and we could also condition to get rid of, you know, the ornamental stuff and simplify it by picking a style. So by the old conditions, number 1, which is choose a style Spanish Revival or Tuscan and be consistent throughout the design, in essence, is one of the ones that you were thinking of, Mr. Malikian, to bring over. Everything else seems to be encompassed in the new set of conditions.
Okay.
Because the old conditions ask for the rear patio to be reduced, which was slightly reduced, but that could be, I think, one that's added as an extra one in addition to what staff has.
Okay. So one of the conditions I want to add on, and I think, and this is just my condition, and whoever's going to make the decision, then you guys can decide on. So I think here, the width and the proportions of this, especially the overhangs, I do want to lower this.
It's one of the conditions.
It's one of the conditions.
But I do, in a sense that the lowering of that, I don't know if I want to keep the shape and it can allow a different type of a window or something that kind of brings out. So I don't know if that is a good idea or not. So I'll let you guys decide on that rather than carrying the same, because the shape of these arches that is here are different than this. So if we actually lower this, as staff was mentioning, this arch is going to be different unless they can match these so these are all consistent. If they're not, then I would look into the design of this one.
That's a good point.
So that's just one. So how do we want to move with this? Do we want to?
And can we add a condition that in case staff doesn't believe that they met the conditions, to basically send it back?
That can't be a condition, that would just happen if, for whatever reason, they don't meet the conditions.
Okay.
One of the things that I would like staff to consider is on the north elevation, the column widths seem to be equal except for the third one. And that looks a little odd to me. I would defer to the city architects on further comment.
I mean,
The third from the left.
the whole columns for me are awkward because you have like two set of columns that you're stacking, and bottom are square, the top are round, different dimensions.
And the stone is the
Yeah,
square.
I think
And
the
the-
issue
the
is that
stone
some of
is
the columns are
distracting.
square and some are rectangular, so when we see the rectangles on end, they get skinny. We could certainly have a condition to have consistent column shapes and sizes easily.
So I'll take a stab at putting a set of conditions together, and then we'll see where this goes. So from the old set of conditions, if we could bring in the first condition, which was choose a style, Spanish Revival or Tuscan, and be consistent throughout the design.
Could I just jump in on that? A previous colleague of ours was focused on style in a way that current staff may not be so much. Tuscan isn't really a style outside of the real estate community. There's a Mediterranean revival concept that Spanish kind of fits into. I think when they were talking about Tuscan for this house, it was just the amount of stone on it, because otherwise it more or less, especially at the front, has kind of the forms that if this were all stucco and red tile roof, we'd probably call it Spanish colonial. And if we're getting rid of the stone, then we could see if there are other aspects of this that are
Point well
Tuscan.
taken from the historic experts. So
I'm just
how about
throwing
how
it
about
out there, then.
we say choose a style and be consistent throughout the design.
Okay.
Okay. And then we could incorporate all the conditions that staff currently has today. And we're going to add two conditions, one of which is what you indicated, Mr. Platt, which is be consistent with the shape of the columns throughout the design. And the second is what
Reduce or eliminate the second
bal-
floor balcony.
balcony in the front, and then also reduce the size of the rear balcony, if that's what I've heard from Mr. Charchi.
I think it was included in the previous condition.
Okay.
Previous condition.
So then let's split those up. I stand corrected, there'd be three new conditions added. Make the columns consistent, reduce the front balcony, and number three is work the proportionality of the columns and also the rear balcony so it's more consistent with the design.
And one of the architects volunteered at the rear balcony that they could put a planter on the side adjacent to the neighbor. That often has the effect, which the board has recommended in some cases, to pull people away from the edge, which enhances through planting and distance privacy. Did we include that?
Do we want to add a condition?
And I don't see anything that talks about the ornamental metal. If you guys want to add a condition for
Well, going back to that planter,
Okay.
if it's a solid planter which is built out with stucco, it changes the whole ornamental metal look of the wraparound of that balcony.
It could.
If it's wrought iron planters hanging over on the interior side, that could be consistent. I mean, this is a lot of tweaking.
Totally agree, and so when we're saying choose a style and be consistent with it, it's almost like all those items could be intertwined, and then it's whether a question of staff taking care of it or it coming back, but overall, as far as direction is concerned, that comment at least could encompass your concerns.
True.
So, then with that.
Can I ask one other thing?
Yes.
Is the stone considered when we're choosing the consistent style? Because I think I heard either reduce the stone, eliminate the stone, or bring it down to a base course. If we're going with the Spanish, or even maybe a Tuscan, a base course really isn't a
You
typical.
said Tuscan.
There's no
I know.
There's no Tuscan.
I'm humoring you. Even Tuscan. There wouldn't normally be a base course, but if that's what you think would be fine, that's okay too. But would your direction on the stone be incorporated in that condition, or you'd rather have a separate one for the stone?
I think there's been consensus overall to reduce the height of the stone to the base, which the architect agreed to, and I've even asked a question, and the architect agreed that they're not set on this type of stone, and that we could use more of a horizontal type of a stacked stone if that helps the style, if it's more Japanese side, and if it's more on the Spanish side, it should be something else.
Okay, so I'll have a condition to either reduce the height of the stone or eliminate the stone altogether.
I would rather eliminate rather than have a big stone, because I think that's just a lot more appropriate than spend the money and the effort into the details, I'll just rafters.
Eliminate.
I think that would be a choice on my case, because right now it's just placed all over the place, so.
So we'll
Okay. So, eliminate this.
eliminate, okay.
This might be one of the most conditions ever. Okay? I think we got it all, so.
Okay, so we will go with all of the staff conditions. To the extent that those overlap with any of these, we'll modify that. The new conditions that we're adding are choose a consistent style and stick with that. That will apply to cladding, to railings, to any other aspects that we think reflect the style. We will ensure that all of the column shapes are consistent and their dimensions are consistent, so we have evenness around the perimeter. We're going to reduce the front balcony in size and prominence. We're going to reduce the size of the rear balcony. I could put in a consideration for a planter. They also did mention that they're going to pull it back further from the property line next door. So if you give us direction on the planter consideration, or just, or we could have a condition, reduce the size and enhance the privacy to the adjoining property.
We can't have a condition on privacy from a bedroom.
We can for the balcony, but not for the bedroom.
No, okay, so, okay.
Yeah. I did hear a proposed condition about reducing the size of the windows for privacy. If you want to do that, you have to give us a design rationale for that rather than a privacy.
So how, going, kind of following on the reducing the balcony, because it is attached to the second floor. We're talking about the second floor north elevation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So the architect suggested that they're going to push back the second floor. So how's that going to tie into the, what is that going to look like? How are they going to
As
break
it wraps around the corner.
How does it wrap? What is this transition of, the detail?
Well, the master bedroom could push out over the patio cover to the east, I think.
I'm looking at west elevation. Sorry.
Oh, when that's going to be pushed in.
So if they are going to push the second floor in, looking at the old.
How is that condition?
So and also the dining or the living room downstairs that Mr. Simonian mentioned, to push that in to be able to have an additional kind of a corner right at I guess you can call it grid line 3. So I'm just wondering, how does that going to look, in a sense that, do we have just a break in the wall, or is it going to have like a detail, a cap, or, so that I'm not sure.
A roof,
Are you
maybe?
guys okay to handle that?
Yeah, definitely. And I also see room, if we didn't break the facade at that location and we broke it where the master bedroom breaks from the closet, the whole master bedroom could shift over that first floor patio, giving a decent break there. We could eliminate the rear balcony and create a new balcony possibly over that first floor patio that really wouldn't be overlooking the neighbors quite as much. And that would be accessible from the master bedroom and also the bedroom number 1. And then we could have, I guess, 3 breaks on that west facade as we step back from the street.
Yeah, you have one
Possibility.
right on grid line 3 where
Right.
the dining room it will be pushed back.
And then we'd have one on grid line 4, say.
But then that funny looking ornamental
We can get rid
metal
of that.
thing.
We can
yeah.
just get rid of that.
Yeah.
Mhm. But we're comfortable working
Okay.
with a variety of possible options when they work with their client to see. So I'll make that condition. Well, we already have that built in, but we know the direction that you're suggesting.
So I move to approve.
So before you, now that we're getting rid of majority of the stone, we're okay with the color, the vanilla?
I was looking at that, and I'm not sure if that's a true representation of the vanilla, the French vanilla. I thought the French vanilla was a little lighter of color. We could get a verification from the architect.
Okay. So,
Well,
so I'm
do you
just
think
kind
it's
of,
too much
I
of a
just
yellow?
don't, I don't want it, I mean, now we're creating just a stucco box, so I'm just, this giant yellow stucco box sitting there, and just, I think, you know, I think a little bit softer color would really be more appropriate, I think, and more of a beige tone, rather than more of a bright yellow color, I think. I don't get into the colors, but I think now now that it's just, everything is stucco now.
So you want to, maybe we go with more earth tone beiges.
I think so. I think a little bit more
Okay,
earth
so
tone.
we've just added a condition to soften the color toward a
Yeah.
beige or more earth tone color. And then I assume you'd want the windows to be probably either a dark brown or another dark color to contrast?
Not white.
Yeah,
So
definitely not.
something contrasting.
So, I move to approve the project with conditions as stated.
I second that.
Okay, this is a roll call. Board Member Charchian,
No.
Board Member Benlian,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
and Chairman Malikian.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, we have the next project, 1308 East Broadway, and I think we're going to have a,
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself on this.
And then are you coming back
Yeah.
for the next one?
We want to switch?
you want to do that?
If you guys don't mind.
If, that would be fine. Mr., is it okay if can we switch that? I mean, is it going to be a problem with the scheduling, the Channel 6? And
Switch the agenda?
yeah, because then he can recuse.
It's up to the board.
Is Mr. Bhaktiyan available? Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, if staff is available, it might be a good idea. That way, Civilian doesn't have to wait around.
The applicant here?
Oh.
Do you live in that area?
No.
So we're going to be switching the projects, Adams and Broadway, the two projects, only because one of our board members are going to be recusing himself, so we're going to switch and accommodate him, and as well as we have staff, so we are ready. Okay. Staff ready?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Design Review Board members, this is the third item on the agenda, and it's Design Review case number PDR 1704258, and the proposal is to develop an 18-unit affordable rental housing project with a 36-car parking garage on the ground level, and the property consists of 3 lots totaling approximately 18,000 square feet and located at 913, 917, and 921 South Adams Street. In April of 2007, the project received approval for a density bonus housing plan application. And this falls under state law, whereby several of the units would be reserved as affordable units, and the project gets granted concessions and incentives for development standards.
So it was an SB 1818 project.
Right.
For rent or for sale?
It's for rent.
For rent, okay.
So the project received this approval back in April of 2007, and the development standard concessions that were requested and approved related to building height, an additional story basically, an increase in the allowable floor area ratio, interior setback exemptions, and to not provide the additional common open space that gets triggered because of the increased lot width that results from combining the three lots into one development. So the density bonus is approved. Now we are at the design review stage. The project plans are behind you on the board to my right. Staff has reviewed the project. We think the project is not consistent with respect with the design guidelines in several respects, and the project conditions are intended to address those inconsistencies with the design guidelines. As a result, staff's recommendation is for the project to be returned for redesign, and the conditions that are listed on page 7 of the staff report relate to the box units and the massive appearance of the building, and require additional articulation of the building facades and the roof line. The conditions also require the addition of finished materials and textures. Based on this proposal, the materials primarily revolve around different stucco colors. So staff's recommending that additional materials and textures be introduced. Redesigning the front entry. As the project is designed, the front entry to the building is not well defined and inviting. Modifying the landscaping to better relate to the building, especially at the front of the property. In a nutshell, these are the main conditions. Other conditions are added to further fine-tune the project. Having said this, I'd like to add one more item. We received one comment from a neighboring property, from a neighboring resident. We distributed to the board members. The comments were mostly about questions and some additional comments about the project, namely related to traffic and some other things like that. The project applicant is in the audience to address further questions from the board. I'd like to conclude my presentation unless there are questions from the board.
We do have questions for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bakhtigian, you mentioned that the previous approval in 2007, based on an SB 1818 project, they had gone concessions on interior setbacks, FARs, and they had requested to eliminate the additional open space requirements.
Right. That was a 2017 approval, actually, April of 2017. Not
2007 or 17?
17.
Oh, you just answered my question. Okay.
A couple of months ago.
Okay. So I was confused on that one. So then these three concessions obviously are the ones that the applicant is asking relief from.
Actually, there are four of them.
Yeah. And what was the fourth one?
One is height.
Number of stories.
FAR.
Open space.
And interior setbacks.
But I was under the belief that you could only have 3 concessions in an SB 1818 maximum.
The applicant can request as many concessions and waivers as the applicant wishes to request. The findings are different. For the first three,
They're on menu items.
right, as opposed to
Off menu.
anything over three. So whatever's over three has an additional level of review and
And
findings.
then it's just a negotiation at that point, anything after three, as far as what they're giving
Right.
in return. And then so far as all those negotiations, discussions and whatnot, what were some of the concessions that were made in lieu of the fourth? What was provided by the applicant in lieu of the fourth concession?
Well, what the applicant provided and was approved was to hold, I don't remember the exact figure, either 3 or 4 units as affordable units.
2 units as extremely low.
It's in the attached, let me take a look, it's in the attached
I think you have to put
approval.
11%,
Yeah.
Okay.
10 or 11%.
Okay. And then this April 2017 hearing approval, which body approved?
A planning hearing officer,
I see.
but at a public hearing.
I see. Oh, so that sets our base, and now we're talking about the design.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
So I have a question. So the interior setback that you mentioned, which is the 9-foot, the 12-foot, or the side setbacks, correct?
Right, interior setbacks.
So, not the rear?
Also
Interior
the
as well?
rear, yes.
Also the rear?
Because the
So-
parking podium goes all the way to the rear property line.
So not the actual volume, it was for the garage itself, the podium, for the variance, right?
And some of the building setbacks on the sides and rear. Actually, not so much the rear, because the rear, the building is pushed away from the interior property line, the rear property line, but on the sides, it was a concession.
And my last question, has staff communicated with the applicant with these conditions?
Yes, we had 2 meetings with the applicant regarding the design of the building. The applicant wished to proceed, and we made it clear to the applicant that our recommendation would be not in favor of the final design.
And the last question, has traffic and transportation looked at the parking?
The project is exempt because of the state mandates.
So by having 2 separate parking structures, technically, because as you enter in one gate, you can't come out the other, so you essentially you go in,
right,
and you just have to back out. There's no turning or anything. So, and there's no loop around, kind of, per se.
There's no backing out. It's possible to maneuver inside and to head out, but the two parking areas in the parking podium are separate, and they are each served by a separate driveway access.
Okay. Thank you.
Seen it.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to open the public hearing. Armik Shanazarian.
Good afternoon, members, staff. I'm representing my client, which the property owners. As Mr. Badikan indicated, the project is a medium-high density, multifamily, affordable renting project. We've been working on this project for roughly about 2 years, and we got to a point that we requested, as indicated, for the height, for the setback, and for the
Open space.
In conjunction with that, we requested to have an on-grade parking space due to the fact that we didn't want to disturb the neighborhood as far as excavation and creating, hauling of dirt and things like that. So that was our base, main point as doing on-grade parking. Even though we only required to have 9 parking spaces based on state requirements, we provided 36 parking spaces. And due to the fact also from outreach to the neighborhood that there was a traffic in that area, so they want us to do more parking spaces rather than creating an open space or the communal. area. So that was one of the things that we negotiated also with the housing department. So the project, as far as the condition of approval, we understand as far as items 3 to all the way to 13, I have no problem with those. We do have a problem with the item number 1 as far as articulation and the roof line. The reason behind that is we try to maintain the roof because building being 4-story height and inside the rooms are roughly about 8 feet high. We don't have a space to manipulate the roof line because we are maximized as far as the height up to 41 feet. We cannot play with the roof, and we do have a flat roof and we have a parapet line that is going to be used for screening of air conditioning. So there's no way that we can manipulate or articulate the roof line. That was the reason that we cannot provide that. The second item is as far as the enhancing the breaking the mass. We have done at the building. If you see it, it's basically it's 3 different buildings. It's designed in such a way that it looks like 3 different buildings. There's a opening throughout, and so we try to, by breaking that point, to create the bringing down the mass. So if you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
All the units are affordable?
Not all the units are affordable.
How many?
2 units are low, very low.
How was it? I can't.
2.
Only 2?
2. Yes. 2.
And the rest are market rate?
The rest are market, but the 2 are approximately very, very low, which is roughly about $600 a month.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, insofar as some of the hardships that you presented about the height being restricted because of your 4-story, have you considered on even partially, even if it's 2 feet digging in, even in a minor setting, just 2 feet where you're not really doing shoring, where because you have your 5-foot setbacks, you're able to maybe do a 1-to-1 and maybe some vertical cuts and still achieve a 2-foot semi-subterranean situation, you would gain your 3 feet.
Yes,
to
doing that, but it also
work.
creates problem as far as the getting the rainwater in, because we have experienced throughout the years with different projects that now you have to pump the water out.
Correct.
And that is becoming an issue now with the LEED program and things like that. You have to provide clarifiers and things, and in maintaining those things, it becomes a thing issue. But the way it is if I, as far as the landscaping, if I have an idea, if I permit up the area portion of the landscaping at the front of the building, that would block the nicely, gently. That's what I'm saying. If I work on a landscape area, I think we can enhance it. That doesn't look like a massive project. And remember that this is in front of also the Glendale Community College annex, which they have already 4-story buildings around that area.
Mr. Khan, can we get the street view up?
Which one, sorry?
Street view, so we can see what it looks like from the street.
So what was the maximum height allowed?
Thank you.
The maximum height allowed in that area is 36 feet.
36?
If I'm not, 36 feet high. So we went 5 feet above that.
Can we see the other side of the street? Mr. Khan? Yes.
On the elevations, I see 39.6, and you mentioned 41.
We went maximum.
Okay, so it's 41 to
the highest point. Even though, yes, at the sides they're less, but I mentioned to the highest point.
But
it's 41 to this.
41, yeah. Well, how deep is the property?
The property, 120 feet deep.
So in order to provide natural drainage, which you're trying to achieve, you're probably going to have to raise the rear of the property 2 feet or so, give or take, to have your natural drainage.
Correct.
And so then when you're looking at your facades, especially on a side facade, when you look at the corner on the west side compared to where the building hits the ground along Adams, you're going to go over your height anyways, right?
I don't think, because remember the street is sloping, so we can use that to drain it to this side and bring it to this, so we can cross-drain it.
You've looked into that?
Yeah, we looked into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Asatorian?
I don't have much to add, except just to...
If you can state your name.
Sorry.
and-
My name is Michael Asadourian. I'm the owner with my dear wife, Dr. Lena Asadourian. I just want to emphasize to the board that this is a state proposed affordable program, basically, that we're trying to meet. So the cost it's important that we keep the cost also affordable for us too. So that's why, I mean, and we spent, as Armik said, about 2 years extensively trying to optimize this design to avoid the mass look and also to minimize the area ratio, the floor area ratio, to make it as low as which we end up 1.8 instead of 1. So that's basically it. So, and other than that, just hope. I mean, we're going to try to meet as much as possible, but certain things are kind of some of the comments here. To me, it's kind of subjective, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it Danny Figueroa?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dani Figueroa, and I oppose it because it's too much noise for me, and I have 4 kids at home, too much dash, so I have a problem with the park sometimes, especially in holidays. So for this one, it's very, very too hard to say. I'm sorry, but I know my English, okay?
That's okay.
Ms. Figueroa, in relation to where the house, the apartment complex is being built, where do you live?
In the corner.
The north
Right.
court?
In the corner, in the Adams, with the Acacia.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Adams and
next to
Acacia.
the.
Okay.
Yeah, it's next to the project.
Thank you.
Okay.
She lived just south of.
Yeah, just south of, and then the one you bought there.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? If not, there's nothing to rebuttal. So, do we have any questions?
No.
Any more questions? No. Then public session is closed. Mr. Turchin, I'll let you go ahead and start.
Sure. You know, on the surface, this looks like a project that could definitely benefit South Glendale. Affordable housing is obviously something that would be a good thing for Glendale. And these projects are always difficult because we're kind of hamstrung on some of the elements that the state gives to developers for the concession of, in this case, 2 extremely affordable units. But at the same time, the design guidelines are the design guidelines, and I think that staff does have some very legitimate points as to the overall aesthetic aspects of the design. In particular, one thing that struck out to me was even though the overall space, green space, has been reduced in this project because of right, as indicated by the affordable housing component, the actual design of that green space is further limiting the usability. For example, the curvy hardscaping really is not functionally useful. I could see it being redesigned in such a way that you could have seating where those curbs could be used as seating, or other elements in the front and also in the interior. In the very back, there seems to be some call-outs that are inconsistent with, like patio sets being placed there. But realistically, if those hardscapes were a little bit more linear, maybe, they could provide more ability for the 36-plus people that are going to be living in this building to have some outdoor space. As far as the articulations, I think the applicant has done a little bit of work on that with the separate volumes and the color schemes. I think there could be more done. I've just witnessed the board approve with several conditions another project that I was on the minority on. Here we have less conditions, and it's being suggested to come to redesign. So I would like my colleagues' comments on that, because we just had another project, a different kind of project, but a different project, that it was conditioned and prescribed in such a way that it got an approval. Here we have this project that has less conditions, although much more meaningful ones from a design perspective, elevation changes and potentially going subterranean to meet some of those conditions. But it was given approval. So I'd like to kind of get your thinking on that as well.
Okay. Well, Mr. Charchian, since you asked, I don't know what the history of this project is. However, at times when staff is at an impasse, they kind of throw their hands in the air and ask for help. And I don't know if this is one of them, but that's kind of what's happened in the past. So that's been my experience on that. Insofar as the project is concerned, these SB 1818 projects are very challenging. We haven't had a lot come in front of this board. I think this might be the third or fourth one we've had. Yeah, maybe less than a handful. And so it, for example, the city of LA, where you don't have a design review board, it's more clear cut. An applicant is able to get the concessions and move forward fairly easily. And as you get into a design review board process, then as you talk about mass and articulation of roof lines, et cetera, as Mr. Charchian is saying, those become a little more difficult to define with just letters. I guess they become different shades of gray in a sense. When I'm looking at the articulation of the building along Adams, I think the different masses that are created, I think, have articulation. However, the use of a singular building finish, such as stucco, where they're just relying purely on color to create interest, I think is causing some of staff's comments. And so, when I'm looking at it, the use of the balconies is helping the facade, and then we have an opportunity to do something special over the entrance and to use some different materials. And we've already kind of gone into the contemporary route, so we could introduce some vertical metal siding, let's say, as an alternative, and other material that would further define entryways and the different components. So I think there's some work to be done there. Also, the south facade, just from looking at this rendering, it's just kind of a straight wall. And so I always try to look at these projects where if I just squint and imagine that it's all a blank white canvas, does it have enough articulation, and does it have enough variety with different materials? And I think that's where some of these facades could benefit. And this board has approved different projects before that have flat roofs, and so it does really become how successful an applicant is in dealing with undulation of facade, differentiation of materials, how those materials start and how they wrap around corners, etc., that in essence define more of a contemporary building, which thereby is more in line with a flat roof. And so I do think that if the facades are undulated and reworked in such a way with finishes and materials that there might be able to solve your height issue and stay with your flat roofs, but not go in subterranean. Because in essence, unless you go subterranean, you're not going to be really able to achieve the articulation in the roof unless you start to reduce your height. And frankly, I don't know what was the height that was approved, and I don't want to get into that, but I kind of see the conundrum there. But I do think that if the facades are reworked, as I mentioned, that might not be as much of an issue. And so far as the open space is concerned, it's always nice to have as much usable open space as opposed to planners. So that, I think, is a worthwhile comment. And it seems as though the applicant is okay with items 3 to 13, so that's really the first two we have to worry about, and which are the main things that we're kind of referring to. So I'll just leave it at that for this moment, and then we could kind of come back and I could discuss things as different thoughts are brought forward.
Okay. Yes, please.
I kind of agree with Mr. Simonian's comments in terms of, I think most of the issues that we're having with this building is the idea that you're following just one material stucco, you don't have material variation. And I can really appreciate the fact that you're even thinking about affordable housing. I'm currently doing my doctorate in housing, and I know how desperate we need, how desperate the state and us, we need like affordable housing. So that's a big challenge to take, because I understand sometimes your performance don't work as well when you start giving these concessions, but at the same time, that doesn't mean the quality of the building should go down. You can try your best to maximize it in terms of like square footage, in terms of making things stack up, do things where it lowers your construction cost, but at the same time you want the building to look nice because this is a building you're gonna own. And I have one idea about the height and breaking down the volumes. I think the highest you can go is 41, and you went to this green part. But just think about that. If you move up this whole line to 41, and then you start dropping these to where they are, drop some of them down, that will help you like break that line. I think this is just one simple idea that could work. Other than that, I agree with Mr. Simonian. If you kind of like paint this whole thing one color, it's going to look like a giant box, and that's exactly the opposite of design review board. So once you start just by pushing the elevation maybe a few inches in, few inches out, and use different materials, which is not going to impact your cost dramatically if you come in and you use a different material on this volume. And what's not helping you here is most of these volumes are very close when it comes to sizes. So that's not helping you because they're very uniform, and that's even adding extra to the mass. So if they were even different sizes, that will help break it easier. But I think I agree with Mr. Charchian. This is a project that I'm okay approving with staff condition. I think staff hit most of these things on the spot, but I would have to disagree with you. You have to take care of item number 1 and 2, and you can easily do that. So these are my comments.
Thank you. So before I start talking about the design, I just want to kind of quickly touch upon Mr. Charchian's question. I think comparing the two projects, which we shouldn't, and I'm just going to talk in general because the other project is closed now. This particular project, because of its mass and scale, and because of the impact that it has to much larger and much bigger volume, I think this has much more importance in a sense that the impact that it has to its surroundings. So that's why these conditions are more relevant for them to come back to us rather than just getting it approved, because it will allow the public to see what we're going to end up with, in a sense. before it gets approved. So that's my take on it. That's how I see it. So as far as, I agree. I commend the owner deciding to do an affordable housing, which I think it's definitely needed. But I tend to agree with staff that an opportunity has been lost because of the conditions that has been placed. It's kind of ironic to hear that this is an affordable and it's an affordable project that the savings needs to come in, but there are certain things that are done that it's unnecessary. It's adding cost that it could have been taken from there, bring and add the materials and so on and so forth. I've done many projects and I've seen many projects in LA affordable. And one of the things that people do is rather than hide materials behind colors and paints and stucco and all that, they start exposing them and make them as part of the design of the project. For example, that entire base that you got covered in stucco, that thing is going to get built out of block. So why don't you just leave that exposed block? Seal that with, get a split face block or some other material. Then that gives you a interesting base there. Becomes a true base. Why do you have to cover that entire elevation with stucco and reveals? Why do you have to put a planter at the ground level behind a glass, indoor planter? Why not outside? Why do you have to spend that extra money creating, why do you have to spend that extra expensive money creating this glass that it's essentially it's right in front of a, just that right here, and you have like indoor planter. You have these little planters that are hanging off the right here, which almost no one's going to be able to maintain. So there's a lot of thought has gone into creating some details that doesn't make sense to me. And if the cost is an issue, it's irrelevant. I don't think it's necessary. So, and I 100% disagree with the architect saying that they cannot do anything. Look at the section right here. You have this extra space, this 3 feet. You can just simply get rid of this little parapet and move this little parapet back 6 inches and just emphasize this little volume. Just let it come down and let the back parapet carry over. And that on its own, you're creating these extra volumes, which is irrelevant in cost. I mean, you're already building this 8 foot. You're not even doing anything. This little top section that you have over the roof, this is an unnecessary. You can just carry this across and lower this section, the parapet height. You don't need to have a parapet here. That gives you a different volume, different elements there. I mean, these little articulations, these little details that it's being added on. Why? Why do you need that? So there's a lot of these efforts have gone in, which to me is unnecessary, but a major effort has been ignored to make this project more viable. By eliminating the entire basement and going subterranean, that on its own should be an incentive for us to be able to look at this in a more favorable way, in a sense that there's a lot more effort has gone into these little details. Using these steel railings that, again, it's unnecessary. I mean, why do you need to have this, this little ornaments and stuff like that? Just make this a simple project. But again, the entire design is a stucco box. And using colored stucco to emphasize the same height, same planes, same volume sizes. It's really it's kind of defeating the purpose of creating this interesting and new, forward-thinking kind of a living space. There's a lot of examples in West LA, a lot of examples in LA and these types of projects, and almost everyone builds it out of stucco. So it's not like it hasn't been done because it seems like it's the cheapest, but some contractors, some developers tend to disagree. I think there's other materials there that are much cheaper than stucco, which gives them a much better materials there. But again, I agree with staff. I think there's a lot of these conditions here that, we need to go back to the drawing board. There's a lot of savings, as you mentioned, stacking up the structure, that is the biggest savings. Not going to subterranean, that is the biggest savings. So I think a overall look of the design, forward thinking, emphasizing some natural materials that is being used, and just kind of looking at all these details and elements there that is going to save both in cost, but at the same time it's going to bring the design to life. Yeah, I agree. So unfortunately it's closed. So unless there's anything you need to add that you missed, we can't have a deliberation. So I'm sorry, there's no communication. If any thoughts, anything else? Do we want to continue on? Do we want to hear what?
I mean, again, this goes back to the difficulties with these low-income housing projects, because there are conditions that are waived. In this case, we've had 4, and that kind of affects design guidelines. And so I would think it would be appropriate to ask if the articulation that we're talking about heights were dictated by the SB 1818 requirements, or
They're not.
They're not. So then I don't see a need to reopen.
Okay. So I would like to go over these conditions one at a time, make sure that we're all on the same page. And if staff would like to start kind of going down the list, and then we'll just kind of say yes or no and give our thoughts on that, and then we'll make a decision after that.
Did you want to go down the staff conditions first? And
Yes,
then
please.
the board discussion, which may overlap in
Yes,
places?
please. Yes.
First staff condition was to increase articulation and variation at the roof line to reduce the appearance of mass, provide more visual interest. Second, provide additional materials and textures to enhance the design and help break up the massing. Redesign the front entry to provide greater emphasis, enhance the overall design. Decorative paving, a standard condition at the driveway or at the building entrance. Parking garage wall facing the adjacent property should be masonry with a decorative finish. That could be accommodated if the applicant chooses to move with a block or other material that we talked about. Window sills should be consistent throughout the building. We need a vertical section of typical window openings, which is standard. Same with cut sheets for proposed lights. Information about the roofs at the side. We were concerned, and we didn't hear the board talk about this, the narrow roof projections at the sides where they're getting some of the stepping for the required setbacks lead to what appear to be flat roofs. The question is, are those drained? Are they evaporative? We don't know. And we're concerned that if that was changed to have a sloped roof, it would really have an impact on the design and may not be desirable itself.
So if we can just stay on that for a second, because I did on my copy outline the 10, 9, 8 step back on those elevations, and it does create, this little ledge, I'll call it, because I wouldn't call it a roof, but these little ledges and they aren't accessible. So we would probably need some sort of understanding as to how those are going to be treated for water, which is the concern, right?
That's one thought we had. We also think that it's not the most imaginative way to deal with setbacks at the side, and if the board is looking for changes in articulation through our averaging process, we might be able to get more meaningful changes and maybe avoid some of those shallow roofs.
And Jay, slight slope over here. I mean, you're not going to even see that.
You're talking about the south facade.
We would then have runoff over the stucco, which isn't going to weather well over time.
I mean,
it's
my
not a great
thoughts-
detail.
My thoughts were when I mentioned, the south facade of actually coming up with a different material, let's say, and shape. So, I mean, we're looking at the south facade, which is, I think, what you're referring to, Mr. Platt. I mean, if these walls are stacked, let's say, this becomes one kind of element. And then this is kind of another element. And then this is another element with a different roof. And then you have this kind of stuff going on. So, in essence, with these contemporary buildings and the setbacks, you end up sort of stacking it. But then with the difference in materials, you're creating shapes. And these shapes kind of, throughout the project, kind of morph themselves into a design language. And those lines are carried across that turn into railings, that turn into other things. Those were some of the thoughts that I was trying to illustrate with the change of materials and change of massing and shapes to create more of a contemporary look. So that's what I would try to push towards if I were to try to answer that specific question. But if they're able to solve it with some other methodology, such as Mr. Bellion recommended, then that's just as fine as well. It just depends holistically how they look at the building.
Let me ask you a question. If, for example, just hypothetically, for example, if, let's say on the south elevation, the lower bump out section of the ground level, that section is carried up to the second floor, right? So that whole, I'm not saying that's the solution, I'm just asking. Is that gonna trigger an additional variance or other things like that? Or
Would that meet the setback?
it would still, I mean, it's gonna be less than the setback required, but it would be part of the variance that was granted, correct? So they don't have to go back and get, because I don't want them to come back if they're coming back, or let's say if they do come back, return for redesign. Their excuse would be is for them not to be able to move, push, and pull different volumes to create more interesting shapes. It's going to trigger them to go back and get another approval, or their approval from the variance to be updated or something.
Yeah, and board conditions can't force an applicant to have to get a variance, so we'd have to shape the condition to give them enough flexibility that your message was clear in terms of the design outcome without requiring any variance, which I think is doable, especially if we're talking about pushing and pulling some of the forms. You are allowed to massage the square footage on a project like this. That's not a given, I don't think, Chris, in terms of the SB 1818. And I would only suggest that to a limited degree. We don't want to change the square footage, but we might adjust it within units themselves so we have a little more ins and outs on the walls that can meet these averages.
No, I think Mr. Malikian's question is, if you deviate a little more on the setbacks, do you need to go
So,
back
for
to
example, let me give you this. So, for example, here, let's just hypothetically. So here, if they come back and say this volume is actually, rather than stops at the first floor, it goes up to the second floor. So this is a volume there. That technically, the second floor, it has a different setback now.
Right.
Is that going to trigger them to go back to variance, get a variance?
No, what it would trigger is for them to adjust the second floor somewhere else so they can meet the average across the length of the facade.
It's a mathematical.
I realize that, but what Mr. Malakian is pointing at, let's say, is on the first floor is a minimum 5-foot setback and average 8. Second floor is minimum 8, average 11, and third floor is 11, minimum, and average 14. But if he extends the second floor up to the third floor, then you're extending the 8-foot minimum to the third floor, and though you're not meeting the minimum 11 feet.
But if they have gotten a variance for the
They have a
setback,
variance that
so
allows
then
this 1 foot stepping.
It should be irrelevant, right?
So he's saying, what he's asking is the relief that was provided in 2017,
they specify
does it eliminate the minimum setback requirement in an interior setback?
It establishes new setbacks, if I understand it correctly.
We'll have to look at it based on what was approved, because there were the requested concessions for interior setbacks. There were specific concessions requested for each level with respect to the minimum and the average. It would be quite difficult now to answer the question.
The reason that I'm saying is that they have gotten a variance on the interior setbacks without getting their design review.
It's not a variance, technically, we know that.
Or their whatever their condition is. So if they have gotten the approval without their design review, and now the design review is changing that.
I believe, and we may have to verify this, it would be very similar to any setback. If we were following the standard code setbacks, you push in one place, you have to pull somewhere else, and you have some room to play across the length of the facade.
Well, I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to open, and I'll let whoever wants to talk, so we'll just, before we deliberate.
Okay, so I'll continue with the staff conditions at number 10. Provide landscaping at the front to be better integrated with the ground level facade and better screening of the garage, which could be affected if we decide to have a more decorative face at the garage. Screening may be less important, but usability may come forward, which follows with condition 11, revise the front landscape to either delete the curved benches or revise the landscaping to allow more use. If seating is proposed, redesign it so that it's actually usable. Again, with the front landscape, we want to do something there so that the building entrance is more prominent, both visibility and its overall appearance, better integrate it from the street to the entrance. And then the final staff condition was for the perimeter walls to be of masonry with a decorative finish on both sides, rather than stucco, which would need to be faced on the adjoining lot.
Before we go into our conditions, on the staff conditions, the only one that I had issue with was the entrance. The entrance seems pretty well laid out. I mean, whether or not we agree with this, enclosed planter piece for an apartment complex, I mean,
I agree with you. I think the only element in the entire project that works is the massing and the proportions of the entry, the how the volumes and all that. So I agree with you, but again, the materials that are used, it just kind of,
blends in.
It blends in. So
we could eliminate condition 12, knowing that through whatever massaging happens across the entire facade, that we know that we want the entry to be well integrated into that regardless.
it was yeah, I mean, I think it's a repeat of another area of 11, really.
So, do we have our conditions that we talked about?
Yeah, I'll go over those. Let me make sure I have the right sheets. Commissioner Charchin addressed the seating at the front, which I think conforms with the staff condition. There was an added condition for the planters at the rear to be less curving and to enhance usable space, probably with more linear planting or planter designs. Let's see. Mr. Simonian did talk about the entry could be improved and talked about the enclosed planter there. We talked about possibly adding materials, metal, possibly vertical siding, which conforms to the staff condition but is more specific. The south facade looks like a single wall. That kind of addresses what we were just talking about in terms of finding more ways to articulate the sides as well as the front. Mr. Simonian also mentioned the height issue that could be resolved by through facade materials. That could also be resolved through what the condition Mr. Malikian was suggesting in terms of lowering sections, changing the depth of the cornice so that it forms canopies over the balconies. Mr. Simonian agreed, I think, that all the open spaces need to be made more usable. Mr. Benlian suggested that one way to achieve variation in the height would be to bring the parapets up to the max or toward the maximum, if not at the maximum, and then drop it down in certain areas because they're not currently at the maximum height.
What is their maximum height?
41 feet.
There's 18 inches from where they.
Okay.
Yeah, so staff would recommend doing that if it didn't lead to overbearing masses when we're in the areas that are being raised. If we figured out a way to balance that.
Just want to confirm the height of the garage, though. They have an 8-foot clear garage, but for ADA, a portion of it has to be bigger. So, I mean, if you're talking about something might need to be looked at.
A lot of effort has to go into
Yeah,
studying the.
because I just noticed you're going to have to provide van access, and that's even going to push one of your parking structures over.
8 or 9, it's 9.
It's 9.
I think it's
But,
8.
but you do, they are, I mean, let
Yeah, I
the
mean, by the
architect
time
deal
you
with
run
that.
your plumbing, your exhaust ducts, your fire sprinklers, sloping.
Okay, so.
What we could do is we could add a condition to work with building and safety to determine garage heights, which could, well, if that is going to affect the podium height in locations, that could affect the design.
It's their, I mean,
Yeah,
if it's
it's
going
up
to
to
increase
you.
it, it's up to them, so.
Okay, we want to
yeah,
have that.
Was that it?
Going back to the board members' discussion and conditions, Mr. Benlian also discussed the fact that the uniform size of the kind of vertical modules marching around the building may be adding to the sense of mass, and that more variation in those sizes could help with the articulation and sense of mass. Going on to Mr. Malikian's comments, there is a suggestion to expose some materials, that some materials may even be less expensive than stucco and still work with the budget, with a specific suggestion of possibly using decorative block of some sort at the base to provide visual interest and differentiate it from the upper floors.
They can use just the CMU block, but vertical stack rather than staggered.
Or there's a lot of interesting block around, so that would be something they could explore. I'm sorry, I thought it was Mr. Simone and Mr. Malikian specifically addressed the planter at the entrance behind the glass and kind of didn't think it was an added value item on the design. There was the discussion of creating overhangs over portions of the facade, especially at the balconies, that could help reduce or provide variation at the wall heights and kind of integrate canopy cornice line in certain locations. Another point that the steel railings proposed may not be necessary and may not be an added value, and that a simplified approach might be more appropriate. And then just a general condition to revise the overall look with a note that I wrote down about using natural materials. I wasn't sure exactly where you wanted to take that, but we could talk about a material palette if you want. And unless Chris has anything else?
That's it, you've
I think
covered them.
that's it.
But I think all of them are already covered in our.
One
To
added,
some degree, yeah.
one added condition or comment. Seems like score joints is one of the design features of this building. I recommend that the score joints are thought through and placed appropriately rather than randomly. And so they make sense rather than just float in the middle and carry over other elements that it's unnecessary. So that's something that needs to look So if they're going to go the route of stucco and breakups and all that. So we heard all the conditions and comments. I'm going to open. Whoever wants to come in, we have a minute. If there's anything new, we're not going to have a discussion, so if you have anything new to add, please.
To answer your question about the setback, the project is exempt from setback. So basically, based on a SBA 1818, I could have 0 setbacks.
Okay.
Built under the property line.
Okay.
And I don't
Thank you.
have to go through the
Thank you.
variance
Okay.
or anything.
Okay.
That's the thing, because the staff didn't know what to answer.
Thank you.
That's the thing.
Okay.
So I just want to let you know. And as far as the other item that I want to bring it up, that we met with the staff, especially Mr. Platt, and the indication was that the front facade above the thing to vary the variation as far as the height.
Mhm.
That was a suggestion that brought it up, because we had a different design originally, and he came up with this design. So we did work with the staff.
Okay.
But they got to a point that we had to finalize the project. We couldn't just hold on, because, as I said, we were working for 2 years for this project to get through the different levels. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may clarify something?
Yes.
As the applicant stated, a 0 setback would not be approved. If the applicant had requested that concession and the hearing officer had approved that concession, the project could provide a 0 setback. But the setbacks, the reduced setbacks, whatever was in the application and was approved, those are the new setbacks that are going to govern this building, not a 0 setback.
Thank you for another clarification. So I will let you start. Do you want to start?
We did already.
Do you want to just go ahead and make the start talking about the conditions, and if you want to go ahead and approve it? Or?
I think with the stated conditions, I'm okay to move forward with the stated conditions. I don't know about Mr. Simone and Mr. Joshua.
Well, so here's my take on it. We have a lot of conditions. I think staff is more than capable. I think that we've given a lot of direction as to what improvements are necessary. And I think that I would feel comfortable having this approved with the conditions and not come back. I think that if we give staff a shot at this, I think they're going to have an opportunity to wheel it through. However, I also can see that this has been a project for 2 years, and I do want to hear your feedback as to whether or not, in your experience, this is something that can be resolved, because there is going to be a lot of back and forth still.
The return for redesign condition that staff, and I'm going to speak for staff and let staff continue. The way I see this is that we have pretty much the same conditions, and we're agreeing with staff's condition. And they're saying that by them following these, we don't feel comfortable for us to approve. We want to bring it, we want you guys to see it and approve it. And that's why they're saying, put these conditions in and return it for redesign. And so by us telling them, no, you are capable, and putting him back on that. So that's how I see it. And you tell me, you correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right. We err on the side of approve with conditions generally, and we feel very capable of applying conditions that the board approves. In the case of this large building, we were concerned that even the conditions that we've just discussed can lead to so many possibilities, and we felt that it was important for this to be reviewed again. One thing I'm not sure if all of the board members or the members of the public are familiar with is City Council has recently changed the fee structure regarding returns for redesign, and I think it may go into effect August 1st or 13th. The fee for return for redesign in the past has been identical to the first review fee of $6,000 something, and the new return for redesign fee is going to be 50% of the previous fee, so it'll turn into $3,000 something. And council direction, was that they felt as projects move through this process, the return should not be as expensive as the first visit. I don't know if that's going to, I don't know if it should even affect the board's decision, but it does lighten the burden for applicants who do go through that process.
Good to know, but
You know,
not a decision maker.
On that note, regardless of whether the project comes from us again or is handled through staff, in essence, you need to meet the conditions and you need to work with staff for them to say, okay, you've reached the point that you could go to design review board. So whether it comes back here or is solved at staff level, all the conditions that have been stated today have to be dealt with and have to be modified and have to be incorporated into the design. And I think that's important to point out to the applicant. I personally could, preference would be for it to come back, but it's up to the applicant. If you're able to focus on it and work with staff, then that might save you some time, but if you just think that's impossible, then we come back here.
I disagree with that latter comment. I mean, it shouldn't be up to the applicant.
I think we should make that decision.
You know, here, I mean, it's a difficult balancing, because you have a project here being obviously a smaller project that they've been working on for 2 years. They haven't been able to get to where they need to be, and then we have these larger projects where, you know, we're, like Mr. Platt was indicating, where, you know, water over stucco is not a good look. And the other day I was looking at one of these, you know, bigger projects going up in downtown Glendale, and I'm looking at all these spouts, and they're an inch off of the balconies, and that water's going to go straight off, and you're going to have, you know, these wonderful stain marks 5 years out. It's a concern here, and we're wanting to address it because we have the ability to do so. We didn't have the input on those other buildings from a design perspective, but we also need to have a fair playing field for individuals that are trying to do projects like low-income housing in South Glendale, which I think is an admirable project to take on. So, you know, seeing it again to make sure that it's all worked out and to allow staff to do their jobs is something that I can support. I can also support staff doing it on their own. But staff is saying we'd like it to come back. And so if
I think that's
the consensus, then that's really the breaking
Okay, so let's make a motion and move forward.
Let's do that.
Do you want to make a motion, Mr. Charchian?
I'll defer to you two.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to send the project for redesign with the stated conditions.
I'll second it, since Mr. Charchian is deferring this one.
Yes, I'm deferring.
So we have a motion and a second for return for redesign with conditions. Roll call. Mr. Board Member Bellion?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
And Chairman Malekian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. And so, are you ready? And we're going to have a recusal. Thank you very much, Andy.
See you next
We'll
time,
see
Mr.
you
Bellion.
next week or 2 weeks.
Good night.
Okay.
Good evening and thank you. The applicant's proposal is to construct a new two-story, 2,455 square foot single-family house with a 475 square foot detached garage on a 5,150 square foot lot located in the R2250 multifamily zone, located at 1308 East Broadway. This is case number PDR 1702257. Originally developed in 1947, the site is a 5,150 square foot interior lot with frontage along West Broadway. The site is currently developed with a 2-unit, 1-story, 1,858 square foot multifamily residence with a detached 2-car garage at the rear. The lot is rectangular in shape and relatively flat. The existing development will be demolished as part of the project proposal. The surrounding neighborhood features a mix of commercial, multifamily, and single-family development with a variety of architectural styles and building heights that range from 1 to 3 stories in height. The project site will be accessed from West Broadway via an existing shared driveway easement with the neighbor to the east at 1312 West Broadway, and this will be maintained as part of the new development. An administrative exception was approved by the planning hearing officer, I believe in May of 2017, to allow the reduced driveway width for the new development, and part of the findings indicated that because of the shared driveway easement, the reduced driveway width would be appropriate. In terms of site planning, the new house is centrally sited on the lot and features a rectangular shaped building footprint that's designed in a manner to address the minimum and required average setbacks per the zoning code. East Broadway does not have a prevailing setback, and the new house will feature a 20-foot street front setback. There's about 2,013 square feet of landscaped area proposed on the property, which is in excess of what the zoning code requires. There will be an outdoor area with seating and a spa located behind the new house and adjacent to the new detached 2-car garage. And the project features new drought-tolerant landscaping throughout that complements the design. The site plan does identify that 2 existing palm trees that are located in the front will remain. Staff is recommending a condition of approval that the landscape plan also reflect those 2 trees. The new detached 2-car garage is located to the south behind the new house, and like I stated before, it'll be accessed via the shared driveway easement with the neighbor to the east. Similar to what is there now, the new garage will be accessed via a 90-degree turn and will not be visible from the right-of-way. As it relates to mass and scale, the surrounding neighborhood features commercial, multifamily, and single-family development with heights ranging from 1 to 3 stories. There is no consistent neighborhood pattern. The applicant's proposal will be to build a new 2-story house. The overall height of the new house will be 25 feet 8 inches, where the maximum height permitted is 31 for a house with a pitched roof. The massing of the house is broken up by changes in facade planes and stepping the new second floor in from the first. The second floor of the south elevation cantilevers above the first floor and is visually supported through the use of brackets. Despite somewhat limited stepbacks at some second-floor facades, the project appears consistent with the massing of adjacent and nearby buildings. I believe the building right next door is a 3-story multifamily building. The proposed hip roof forms are compatible with the style of development, and the use of a 4 and 12 roof pitch is consistent throughout the design of the new house and the garage. In terms of detailing, the new recessed entryway is integrated into the overall design, avoiding a sense of monumentality. The entry door will be wood with partial glazing at the top and a window next to it. The new windows are proposed to be block frame vinyl and recessed into the opening with a stucco mold edge detail. The top sash of the windows will feature external grids with a 6/1 pattern. The living room and dining room windows will feature a deep recess, which enhances the appearance at the base of the house as seen from the street. The drawings are inconsistent with regard to the window color. The dark brown vinyl windows that are identified on the material board are appropriate, whereas the white color vinyl windows kind of draw too much attention and would not be appropriate. Staff is recommending a condition that the windows be a dark brown color and that the drawings be revised to reflect that. And the proposed materials for the new house do include a smooth stucco finish stone veneer on the first floor along portions of the north and east elevations, flat tile roof, and metal gutters. The new garage will also have a flat tile roof and smooth stucco finish to match the proposed house. Staff recommends approval of the project with conditions as detailed in staff report. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes.
question. What kind of chimney is it? Is it natural gas, wood burning?
I don't believe wood burning complies with building code anymore, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
you're not. Wood burning's outlawed, so the height of chimneys now can be lower than it used to have to be. If that's
That was my question. So the height of that chimney is at like the level of a window,
Correct.
and that's okay by code?
As
Yeah, we'd have to let building and safety weigh in on that, but our understanding is that the venting is different than it used to be with wood burning.
They could have a direct vent that goes right outside, and so.
They don't even need a
ornamental in
chimney
sense.
now, yeah.
Okay.
They don't even need it.
You don't even need to put that in. It's just a decorative.
Wow. Okay.
But before, it used to be 2 foot higher than 10 feet diagonal.
Because, I'd be worried about that window being open and getting a bunch of fumes in there.
But actually, there is a requirement of combustible air. If the pipe would exhaust at the top chimney, it cannot have openings within certain feet. So if that is going to be the end point of their chimney or their flue, then they would have a problem. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Sir Lam? Oh. I have a card from you, so if you want to speak, if you can state your name.
My name is Chi. I represent the owner of this property. This property was built in the 40s, and the couple has three teenagers, and they grew up around here. They don't want to move out this area. They like riding bikes around this area, so they want to put a little money to fix it up for the kids. That's my statement.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions that might be easier while I'm still up here. It seems as though you have a difference in the way you've dealt with the window trim in the front. This seems to have some sort of a wood trim around, and then this seems to have a different sort of a treatment. Can you explain what's happening on this side?
I think the one on the left, the 3 windows, it's recessed in. And
is that per this detail over here?
That's
that
correct.
Shows a stucco.
That's correct.
Wall that kind of furs out. I see. And is there a particular reason why? I see all your windows are light color. It's just they have a darker wood trim, and then in this case you have a stucco surround that's causing that window casing, and that's why that's.
That's correct.
I see. And some of these shadowing where all of a sudden the window trim color changes, that just probably some sort of a glitch with the shadowing, right? That the trim is the same color all the way around.
Yes.
I see, okay. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Public session is closed. Mr. Churchin?
Other than the really odd chimney and chimney flue that I think from a design perspective should not be within a few inches.
Sir, did you want to speak for this item?
I'm sorry. Would you like to speak? There was no card. Yes. Okay. 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 Guzek Arek Motik. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
So.
So to the microphone. Okay. Կամանց պետք ասեք, որ ես անգլերեն թարգման եմ։
Okay.
Okay, ձեր անունը։
Սերջ Իսաջանյան։
Okay.
Այս թուղթեր ինձ համար եկել էր։
Okay. He received the paperwork
հետո ասան որ այսօր էսի բան կա
So it was a notification that he received. Այսօրվա համար եկեք.
Այո,
And he's here because of the paperwork. So he was just wondering what is. Մի հատ լուր են տվեց էսի այսօրվա համար. Կարևոր մի բան չի.
Այո.
So կարևոր որ ձեզի հատկապես ուզեցել են լուր տան. So the city wanted to notify him. That's why the paper was received. So
Իրանց ասեք որ ես դժվարությունով եմ ապրվում այս տուները երբ հասարակվելու ինչպես այլելու արդյոք ինձ համար մի բան չկա որ կարողանամ աջողվեմ այս գործի մեջ
Okay, so he's wondering when is this going to be built and the hardship that he's going to have throughout the construction.
No.
Ոչի չանցես ասիկը հիմա այս համար
I'd like to find out where the gentleman lives.
Որտեղ եք ապրում?
Broadway վրա.
Ինչ address?
Olive.
Olive եւ Broadway.
Այո, John Marshall դպրոցի հետևը.
So he lives behind John Marshall School, behind John Marshall.
Okay.
Olive and Broadway.
So right.
So I think that if he lives at that distance away from the project site, that he should not have concerns about the construction affecting him.
Okay. So այդ տարածությունը որ կա, այս շենքից եւ ձեր տունին այդքան չի բանալելու, ձեզի նեղացնելու։
Այո։
Շնորհակալ։ Այդտեղի այրվում։
Այսինքն ինչպես չի նեղացնելու։
Որ դուք հեռու եք այս շենքից, այս գետինից։
Այո։
Իմացա։ So դրա համար որ էդիկը որ հեռուությունն է, ձեր տարածությունը որ այս շենքը որ կա, որ հիմա շնվելու է, ինչը որ ձեր տունը տարածությունը ավել է։ So what I'm trying to explain to him is that the distance from the house, his house, to the construction site is far enough that he's concerned about the impact of the development.
It's not as if he lives at the property or
next
adjacent to the property.
Չէ, ես միտքս այդ չէ որ նեղացնում եմ։ Ես ասում եմ էդիկ որ երբ կսարքվի որ ես էլ մասնակցեմ ու կարողանամ ձեր բերեմ այդ տունը։
Այո։ Այս շնորհությունը իրանց համար են սեփական իրանց համար են սարքում, ուրիշների համար չեն սարքում։
Let me take a look at the notice.
So
He might have been for the Adams property.
May I see this? No, it's in reference to the East Broadway property.
So he's
just a notice of the public review hearing because he lives within a certain distance from the property. He received a notice to attend. Should he like to attend,
so
participate in the open
he's
hearing process?
Impression that this project is going to be built and he's going to be able to acquire or rent the house because of the notification. So I need to explain to him. So այսինքն մենակ ձեզի ուզում են լուր տային որ այսօր մի հատ միտինգ այլելու է շնորհչան համար։
Այո։
Okay? So այդ մենակ պատճառը չի ասում որ կարող են ուրիշները առնեն թե կարող եք ուրիշը կարողանա այս տուն ունենա։
Այո։
Ուրիշի համար։
Հիմա չի սարքվի, չէ՞ այս տունը։
Սարքվելու է, իրանց համար սարքվի։ Հիմա եթե մենք ընդունենք այսիկը, եթե թողնենք, թույլ տանք սարքվի, կարող է առաջ, բայց իրանց համար ուրիշի համար։
Մեզ համար չի։
Չէ, ձեզ համար։
Բայց նամակ ինչի համար։
Մենակ լուր են տալի, որ այդտեղ շնորհություն ալում տունի մոտ։ So just clarified, he thought that it's for public, but it's more private development.
Շատ մերսի։
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Ստես։
Hunter. So thank you, Jay, for noticing. Okay, so we close the public. Would you like to?
Sure.
I think I was.
Oh, I thought you were. I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry.
Mr. Platt
Yes.
wisely noticed that someone had been waiting
Yes,
and may have not filled out a speaker card and is now leaving without having spelled that one out. But that's okay. We did get his name for the record. So, again, aside from the design oddity of having that chimney flue so close to the door, which I think could be redesigned to be more aesthetically pleasing and conformity, I think that the overall design of the home is appropriate. I think it is great that a family is looking to convert a two-unit to be a more functional single unit and utilize it and live in a neighborhood that has more apartments than single-family residences. I think it's a good use of the space. The overall design is nice. There is a little bit of a odd overhang in the back, which I think could be maybe addressed differently. On the second story, But aside from that, overall, I can support this project with some minor, tweaks.
Mr. Simone?
I have nothing new to add. I support staff's conditions and overall some of Mr. Charchin's comments as well.
Okay. And would you like to make a?
I would like to move, well, did you add any new conditions, Mr. Charchin,
The only
besides the
condition
chimney
was
cap?
just to relook at the chimney cap and the
Yes.
distance from that window.
And I agree with that.
And so I'd like to move to approve the project
And
with the
just the overhang at the rear, you're cool with?
Are you guys okay with that overhang?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
If you want, you can make it a consideration.
Yeah, consideration to revisit that overhang.
And so I'll approve the project with staff's, I'd like to move to approve the project with staff's conditions, and we would add one condition, which would be to redesign and work with staff on the chimney cap,
The whole chimney, I think.
the whole chimney, the chimney design and the chimney
As it
cap.
relates to that window.
And also as a consideration, as Mr. Charchian recommended, the overhang of the,
The second floor and the rear overhangs,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems to be an odd overhang. So just as a consideration to revisit that area to see if there's a better way to handle that volume.
Okay.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Board Member Charchian,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
yes.
Chair Malikian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Motion passes. Thank
We
you.
have minutes to.
Mr. Chairman, we have two sets of minutes. If the board is comfortable with both sets of minutes, we need a motion and a second, and then we can vote on it for both sets.
So, on May 25th, Mr. Charchian was not here, but Mr. Bellion is missing, so I need to ask the.
So we'll continue the one.
Yeah, we can do that, but for April 27th, we're all here, so. if
So
you
I'll
don't-
make a motion to approve the minutes from April 27th.
I second it.
Mr. Charchian?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion for adjournment?
For the May 25th, I would like to continue that until Mr. Bellion is here.
Noted. And then do we have a motion for?
Motion to adjourn.
Sure.